there were grown adults filming young people with guns who said nothing, who did nothing.
Strong words from the mayor after an online video appears to show a kid holding a gun before Sunday's mass shooting. Fox 45 News examines how much of a role adults play when it comes to juvenile crime. Plus, questions raised why there were only 7 police officers in the area at the time of the shooting. The calls to deploy the National Guard to quell the bloodshed. City crime taking an economic toll on businesses.
Our business dropped tremendously.
One owner gives us an inside look at the financial strain the violence causes. Then Fox 45 News Project Baltimore investigates concerns on the city's failing schools and the youth crime crisis.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Bubala.
I'm Kai Jackson. Fox 45 News is demanding accountability for Sunday's mass shooting as the manhunt for suspects continues. We're looking into a video making waves on social media showing a child pulling a gun out of a backpack.
Plus, we are demanding answers from the mayor's office of neighborhood safety and engagement about why Safe Streets workers at the block party didn't tell police that it was happening.
This was a failure on many levels. There needs to be a reality check with the mayor and the city.
More on that in a moment, but we begin with crime concerns in another part of the city.
2 shootings in 3 days has a Fells Point business owner considering shutting his doors for good.
Fox 45 Jeff Abel joins us live with his concerns tonight. Jeff?
You know, the crime war in this city has many business owners clinging to life support tonight and fearing they could go drowning in defeat. At Denzel's Shark Bar and Grill,
So you're getting layers of flavor.
shrimp and grits are on the stove. But for owner Denzel Richards,
So a lot of my technique is French.
business is on his mind.
I'm going to pay my bills now.
Richards and his wife moved here 3 years ago and purchased the Fells Point building that once housed Jimmy's restaurant. 2 years ago, Chef Denzel began serving his own style of American and Caribbean cuisine.
The reception we have gotten from the general public has been astronomical.
But it didn't take long before business began to stumble. The frequent fights that erupted in the heart of Fells Point often led to an army of officers saturating the area, and roads leading into the community were being shut down.
Any artery pouring into this area is completely blocked off. So how are you going to do the business if the streets are blocked off and people cannot come into the area? And still, even though there's so much police presence, there's still crime, there's still shootings and whatever.
The impact is taking a heavy toll.
Our business dropped tremendously.
The war on crime has many business owners here drowning in debt. Some have given up, others are still fighting. Richards has called on City Hall for help, but his calls have gone unanswered.
But when you try to apply for it, it's just one hurdle over another hurdle, and you don't get frustrated and you just give up. Do they care? I don't know. For the fire department, this is for the liquor board.
For now, his struggle to pay his bills is on, but the dream of restaurant success is in jeopardy.
We don't have the resources to stay alive. We don't think we're going to stay alive for like another 2 years.
You may remember some 3 years ago, business owners in Fells Point threatened to withhold their taxes, accusing the city of failing to provide adequate services to the area. We are live tonight. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Jeff, thank you. And it's not just in Fells Point. Eddie's in Mount Vernon shut its doors at the end of June over crime concerns after 24 years in business. In May, Doc's Smoke Shop in Highlandtown shut down after 2 armed robberies in just 6 months. The owner saying customers shouldn't be afraid when they visit her business. And Maryland-based Giant Food also considering closing some of its locations in Baltimore City, now spending more money for added security. Economists argue crime is taking a toll on the city's future.
It's unfortunate because the city cannot achieve or attain its economic development potential until it gets its arms around this public safety issue, and it hasn't done that.
And you can learn more about the economic impact the violence is having in Baltimore on our website, foxbaltimore.com.
Fox 45 News continues to investigate the response to Sunday's mass shooting in Brooklyn, in the Brooklyn Homes community. We know dispatch calls hinted at a threat at least 2 hours before that shooting took place. And Monzi employees de-escalated at least 3 conflicts at the block party Saturday afternoon, we're told. But Mackenzie Frost looks into why neither of those raised an alarm with city police.
We're piecing together a timeline of what happened during the day and leading into the evening of Brooklyn Day. We know Baltimore police knew about this event hours before the mass shooting took place, and we're demanding answers from the mayor's office to find out why Safe Streets workers left and why no one told the Baltimore Police Department this was happening. Before 11 o'clock Saturday night,
it's quite a big crowd.
Dispatch audio revealing Baltimore police knew a crowd was gathering.
It's Greg McCord, but there is probably close to 900 to 1,000 people, so just stay back.
And people there concerned about safety.
Discharging a firearm, 8:15 Herndon Court, people shooting and fighting at the location, anonymous caller.
But when police showed up on scene a few hours later, 30 people had been shot already, 2 young people killed.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here.
During a news conference Monday afternoon, acting BPD Commissioner Richard Worley says the department didn't know about the event until it was happening, but the city's flagship gun violence prevention program did.
Earlier in the evening, some of our Safe Street staff, just as a part of their community activities, were out there and actively de-escalated 3 to 4 conflicts.
It's unclear when Safe Streets workers were at Brooklyn Day, but we know Monzi did not alert BPD of the massive gathering. So we sent several questions to Mayor Brandon Scott's office and Monzi, including how did Safe Streets workers find out about Brooklyn Day? What time did they leave and why didn't they stay at the event later? Will protocols change within Monzi and other city agencies to relay information about potential threats?
This was a failure on many levels.
David Williams, president of the Taxpayers Protection Alliance, says the mass shooting is another red flag for a program designed to prevent gun violence.
There needs to be a reality check with the mayor and the city because he can't keep on heaping praise upon an agency that is failing at every level at this point. If this really is the future of Baltimore City, Safe Streets should have had a presence there all day, not just part of the day.
Williams also calling for more accountability for the money being spent on Safe Streets. Monzi just announcing $5.1 million in federal COVID relief money going to Catholic charities to run Safe Streets, the same nonprofit running the Brooklyn location, located just blocks away from Brooklyn homes.
This is a failure on so many levels, and giving money to these nonprofits may be the ultimate failure.
The Catholic Charities contract, good for 2 years, and the same organization getting $3.9 million last week from the city to run Cherry Hill and Penn North Safe Street sites. $12 million awarded to LifeBridge's Center for Hope to run 8 sites for the next 2 years. Meanwhile, Mayor Scott and Monzi not getting back to us on those questions until after our deadline, not answering all of our questions, but saying internal policies are now being reviewed. The city council is calling a hearing to bring these city agencies together to try and figure out how there wasn't better coordination. That hearing is scheduled for next Thursday. In the newsroom, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
According to a statement from Monzi, 4 unarmed Safe Streets workers responded to incidents during the day. That statement says what happened in the Brooklyn community directly impacted them as community members. Some of them had loved ones at the event and continue to feel the residual trauma of this incident. Monzi says it's supporting frontline staff at the Brooklyn site.
Video circulating on social media appeared to show a teen pulling a gun out of a backpack on the night of the shooting in Brooklyn. Police say the teen is a possible suspect. Those actions sparking a larger conversation over teens' access to weapons and the level of accountability adults around them should be facing. Fox 45's Keith Daniels joins us live with the fallout on this. Keith?
Well, Mary, it's become a troubling trend. Juveniles named as suspects and victims in violent crimes that are happening across the city. And tonight, that troubling connection with that mass shooting. It's a crime that's left the Brooklyn Homes community in South Baltimore shaken and the city jolted. The mass shooting Sunday at a block party that left 2 people dead with 28 others shot but survived. The victims, mostly minors, one of them as young as 13 years old. The deadly episode, one of the city's worst examples of violent crime involving youth, both as victims and perhaps suspects. Mayor Brandon Scott
Do something.
at a news conference this week calling attention to this image. Look closely. The video seen on social media appears to show a young boy pulling a gun out of a backpack at the block party.
There were grown adults filming young people with guns who said nothing, who did nothing, who didn't say to the police, hey, I know this teenager's out here at this event with a gun.
The image rekindling the debate this week over adult or parent accountability when a child could be connected or ultimately accused of a crime.
We have to have a sense of responsibility to our own community as well.
It's a familiar issue.
Stop! 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 Put the gun down! Put the gun down!
Surfacing again just last month after the shooting of 17-year-old Mekhi Franklin, shot by a Baltimore police officer in June. The teen now facing charges including first-degree assault, shot during a foot chase, police say, while he was holding a stolen 9mm handgun. His mother, Kiara Franklin, spoke out about the shooting, but was also confronted with questions about her responsibility, her accountability.
Yeah, how am I accountable for what he has on him? That's not bad parenting. That's not the parent's fault. You know, how can you blame that on the parent?
But Reverend P.M. Smith, longtime pastor at Huber Memorial Church in Loch Raven and a former defense attorney, believes there is a level of accountability for parents when children do wrong.
You feeding, you're clothing them, and you don't know where they are, you don't know what they're bringing in the house, you don't know what they're carrying out of the house. That is a situation where parents lack accountability because they're not handling their responsibility.
Well, as the juvenile crime rate continues to climb in the city, there are parents desperately seeking, or rather searching, for a cure. Now, Reverend Smith blames broken homes for much of the crime problem that we're seeing in the city. Reporting tonight, Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thank you. Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates says parents need to be aware of the impact their actions can have on children. He shared his thoughts in a conversation with political commentator Armstrong Williams last month.
The mistakes you've made in your life, it's upon you to make sure your children don't make those mistakes. And that's why you have to invest the time. The time. When you invest the time, you'll see the benefits pay off. I'm a big believer of that. My father invested the time. There were times I could not stand that man when I was younger, but then you always look back. He's without a doubt, he's been my hero.
Well, the city state's attorney says he'd like to see legislation to hold parents and guardians accountable for their children's behavior. That brings us to our question of the day. Who do you think is responsible for the youth crime crisis? Parents, city leaders, both or neither? So far, 84% of people who voted say both. Head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in.
All right, a few showers and thunderstorms this afternoon, but still leaving us with steam warmth. Temperatures all in the 70s to right around 80 degrees, so air conditioners are whirring after a high of 93 this afternoon. Now, no cooling relief overnight. There's some showers and storms, actually a whole bunch east of Charlotte and south and east of Richmond. Then there's another round that may visit us towards the weekend. That's gathering up around St. Louis and Chicago. But tomorrow it's another day of heat. Temperatures reaching to about 90, feeling like the low and mid 90s. Stay hydrated. Slim chance of a shower or storm. We'll track the chance of that coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock tonight, Fox 45 News continues to investigate juvenile crime and the role it played in Sunday's mass shooting in Brooklyn. Project Baltimore questions how much the city's struggling school system could fuel the problem. Harford County Police attribute a recent quadruple shooting to gangs in that area. We'll tell you what happened and how the sheriff's office treatment of gangs compares to what happens in Baltimore City. Also still ahead, after another mass shooting in Salisbury on the Eastern Shore, there are now growing calls for stronger gun laws, what some politicians and advocates are pushing for.
Returning to our top story, a mass shooting at a block party in Brooklyn leaves 28 injured, 2 dead, most of the victims teenagers.
As Project Baltimore's Chris Papps explains, it's the latest incident in a city seeing a spike in violence involving young suspects and victims.
2 sisters, born and raised in South Baltimore, turning to their faith.
Yes, they are so inspiring.
In the wake of a horrific weekend. Baybrook Elementary Middle, the school they attended years ago, now a somber scene.
We be singing to help the community to give them comfort and healing. Yep. Because they need what we singing.
Their former school has opened its doors to traumatized students and families who are seeking counseling after Sunday morning's mass shooting. 28 people were injured when gunfire erupted at an annual block party known as Brooklyn Day. 2 more people were killed. 18-year-old Aaliyah Gonzalez, who just graduated last month from Glen Burnie High School and was preparing to attend Anne Arundel Community College. 20-year-old Kylis Fagbimi was also killed. According to city schools, up until last year, Fagbimi attended Coppin Academy High School, a public charter school in West Baltimore, which was part of a recent Project Baltimore investigation. Coppin Academy is one of 23 Baltimore City public schools where 0 students among those who took the tests last year scored proficient in math.
I think they should do like a little more to keep the kids off the street.
Bless those who persecute you.
Sunday's shooting is the latest incident in what many consider a youth violence crisis in Baltimore City. Police believe at least 2 or 3 guns were used in the shooting. They have not named a suspect, but they say they do want to speak with this young person seen on social media pulling a gun out of a backpack at the party. Most of the victims were teenagers, age 17 or younger, school-age children, in a city seeing a spike in violence involving young suspects and victims.
I would want the schools to be better for my nieces, but right now, I'm not seeing that right now.
Project Baltimore looked at the schools in this area. Benjamin Franklin is the closest high school to where the shooting happened. Its 4-year graduation rate is 46%. The state average is 86%. At this school, fewer than 2% of the students tested scored proficient in math last year. About 8% tested proficient in English. Also at Benjamin Franklin High School, 81% of the students were considered chronically absent in 2022. The state average is about 31%. As far as elementary middle schools, the closest to the shooting is Baybrook. Last year, more than 400 students took the state test. 1.2% scored proficient in math. 4.7% scored proficient in English. Just about 54% of the students there last year were chronically absent. While we still don't know a motive, or even if the shooters were from Baltimore, the city's struggling school system has been criticized for failing to educate many students.
We cannot just be defenders of public education and they're not educating our children, especially African American children.
The Maryland chapter of the NAACP held a conference last month calling on school leaders to remedy the dreadful education circumstances for African American children in Maryland public schools, citing a number of issues, including the school-to-prison pipeline. The situation, according to the NAACP, is intolerable and getting worse.
Those are strong words. Absolutely, but what we're seeing is increasing salaries, we're increasing budgets, but the actual academic outcome is decreasing. And it's decreasing certainly more for African American students.
Oh God, bless this suffering community, bless this suffering country.
This community still has few answers. No arrests have been made. Just days ago, 30 people were shot where these people now hold hands, praying for their neighborhood.
That I thought that I need.
We speak your peace over this place, Lord God.
I'm Chris Papst.
We thank you, Lord God, for this community. Yes.
And this is Project Baltimore.
Even if they're unarmed, because on your streets, on your corners right now are armed individuals.
Still ahead, Sunday's mass shooting reigniting the debate over whether the National Guard should deploy in Baltimore. We hear from both sides.
Who's to blame for the rash of violence over the holiday weekend? I'm Janae Bowens in Washington. Coming up, I'll tell you who's responsible and what's being done to prevent crime.
And after a few showers and thunderstorms to cool us off this afternoon and also give us some localized flooding, it looks like we may be in for some more into tomorrow. Starts off rain-free, but by the afternoon, notice, there you go, the pop-up starting to move back in. And it looks like if you're going to be headed out to the pool or maybe headed out on the water, taking a little extended break after July 4th, could see some spotty showers and storms in the afternoon. We're going to be tracking those on the Future Scan hour by hour in a couple of minutes.
Well, 4th of July violence is an all too common situation that's been happening across America. Mass shootings in Philadelphia, Fort Worth, and even Baltimore.
Janae Bowen says the story as communities are left to pick up the pieces.
Baltimore, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. are just a few of the communities that saw deadly shootings this holiday weekend.
The people shooting, they're the ones to blame.
Cully Stimson, a former prosecutor and crime control policy expert, says part of the problem when it comes to violent crime is what he calls progressive prosecutors who do not enforce the law.
So you're seeing violent teens assaulting nannies and moms, walking in broad daylight in San Francisco. You're seeing what's happening in Washington, D.C. over the weekend with people driving up in a van and just shooting people who are just enjoying fireworks. You see what's happening in Philadelphia.
On Monday in Philadelphia, a mass shooting left 5 dead and 2 children wounded. The suspect has been identified as 40-year-old Kim Brady Carricker. The New York Post reports Carricker is a Black Lives Matter supporter. Reports show Carricker had been arrested in 2003 and faced several charges, including possessing a weapon illegally, but it appears he did not face jail time.
According to the National Association of Police, 9 out of 10 police departments are short-staffed, which experts say is a major concern when it comes to violent crime.
We have had 3 years
of the vilification and the demonization of the American law enforcement officer.
But President Biden and other Democrats say the violence is an issue of guns.
Congress needs to step up, pass common sense gun safety laws to protect our kids and educators.
We as a country still allow the sanctity of American guns to outweigh the sanctity of Americans' lives, and particularly Americans' children's lives, and that is something that we have to change.
While there's no clear consensus on how to reduce this kind of violence, the latest data from Pew Research Center shows a growing number of both Democrat and Republican voters say violent crime is a major problem for the country. In Washington, I'm Janae Bowens, Fox 45 News.
Politicians, victims, and advocates across the state pushing for tougher gun laws after 2 mass shootings in Maryland in less than a week. The criticism they have for state lawmakers.
More people are signing on to the lawsuit against BGE over gas regulators. How big the lawsuit is getting and what comes next.
We are following 3 big stories at 10:30. More people joining a lawsuit over BGE's installation of gas regulators in Federal Hill and other areas. Why residents of another neighborhood are signing on.
City and state leaders call for change after Sunday's mass shooting in South Baltimore. Fox 45 News investigates why some elected leaders are pointing to other factors as problems.
And as the timeline surrounding Sunday's shooting unfolds, some new questions about police response in the hours and days after that violence. And we begin there. Calls for additional help are growing louder as we learn only 7 officers may have been on patrol in that district during the shooting Sunday morning.
Fox 45's Maxine Stryker looks into where that help could possibly come from.
In the wake of the Brooklyn mass shooting, police staffing has been called into question. As of June 29th, the Baltimore Police Department telling us they have 527 sworn vacancies. Baltimore's FOP saying just 7 officers were patrolling the Southern District at the time of the Brooklyn Day mass shooting, an event police now say they didn't know about until a few hours prior. The stunning shortage of officers is not a new problem.
We cannot legislate or hire our way out of this gun problem in the city of Baltimore any more than we can around the nation.
After another mass shooting along York Road in Cold Spring Lane last month, one community member called on help from the National Guard.
Just a few years ago, with the Freddie Gray riots, you saw the Guard. And I remember hearing the Adjutant General, a pretty woman named Linda Singh, come on the news and say, oh, this is not martial law. Forget about that. We're not taking over, but we are a presence.
He believes their presence alone could be a deterrence.
Even if they're unarmed, because on your streets, on your corners right now are armed individuals. So why not have somebody who's armed and knows how to shoot and won't take out Taylor Hayes or Mackenzie Elliott or any other? Oh, this should have happened a long time ago.
Last year, the Randallstown chapter of the NAACP urged Governor Larry Hogan to declare a public emergency and deploy the National Guard to Baltimore in an effort to quell rising gun violence. But the last time the National Guard had boots on the ground was 2015 during the Freddie Gray riots. The Guard is often called to respond to state-level emergencies, but we asked Sergeant Betsy Smith, spokeswoman for the National Police Association, if the Guard came to Baltimore not to arrest but assist. Could they be helpful in curbing crime?
I think what we would end up doing if we brought in the National Guard to Baltimore is we would be endangering those volunteer soldiers.
Former Baltimore Deputy Police Commissioner Jason Johnson agrees.
This is a police problem, and not only the police, but I mean, it extends across the community and the various city agencies. But I mean, primarily we're talking about crime fighting, crime prevention, deterrence. It's really a police and criminal justice problem, and it has to be addressed by those agencies.
Smith suggests calling for federal help to step up instead.
I would implore the mayor of Baltimore to go to the federal government and ask for assistance. We have a large number of federal agents in this country, and it would be great to see the Department of Justice deploy them to cities like Baltimore. But again, they have got to come with prosecutors to quickly and swiftly deal with the violent criminals running the streets.
Like those who opened fire in Brooklyn, leaving 2 dead and 28 others with gunshot wounds and the painful memories that will last a lifetime. In Baltimore, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Fox 45 News asked the mayor's office if the mayor would consider requesting help from the National Guard to act as a deterrent and stand guard in neighborhoods, and if the mayor would consider asking for federal assistance. So far, we have not heard back. Baltimore police unveil a plan to use drones as part of a police response to crime scene investigations. The drones will be used in areas such as barricades, active shooter calls, and hostage situations. The Department of Justice and federal consent decree monitoring team helped outline the policy. BPD is holding a 30-day public comment period for input on the proposal. That begins tomorrow.
Well, Fox 45 News is learning 14-year-old Xavier Maddox was killed during a mass shooting in Salisbury. 6 other people were also shot. Comico County police say it happened at a block party. The other 6 victims are expected to survive. No word on any suspects nor how the shooting unfolded. Governor Moore reacting to Maryland's second mass shooting in a week. The governor says these incidents show the scourge of gun violence is not something that any one community or any one group is wrestling with. He goes on to say his administration will not stop in its mission to prevent tragic acts of violence like the ones they have witnessed.
The governor's response to the mass shooting in Baltimore draws criticism from some. Politicians, victims, and advocates are pushing for stronger gun laws. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor reports on what elected leaders blame for the problem.
In the aftermath of one of the worst mass shootings the state of Maryland has ever seen, local leaders reciting a familiar cycle of condolences.
Our hearts are with all those who are still recovering. We grieve with you.
And calls for action.
People are dying in Baltimore, in the United States, and that's what should matter, and that's what we should be acting on every day.
I think, frankly, people are tired of the finger pointing in the politics, and nothing happens.
But while state and local officials are quick to point fingers at Washington,
we need those members in Congress who said way back when Columbine happened in 1999, when I was a freshman in high school, they wouldn't have one more because they were going to do something to actually do something.
So far, the 30 shot and 2 lives lost. Not enough for Mayor Brandon Scott or Governor Wes Moore to take action of their own.
You point one finger at someone, there's 3 pointing back at you.
This isn't a Washington, D.C. problem. This is a Maryland problem.
Political analyst John Deedy and Sean Kennedy with the Maryland Public Policy Institute arguing in lieu of placing blame, there's several opportunities for change on the local level.
The governor offered no significant crime proposals in the last session. This has reached the level of crisis where Annapolis should come back into session and do something about it.
Fox 45 sending questions to the governor's office on Monday and again today asking, will you call for a special session to address the issue? If not, what new actions will you take to prevent gun violence? We also sent questions to the mayor's office asking, why are you calling on Washington and not state leaders to take action? Will you push Maryland lawmakers to call a special session to address gun violence? So far, no response.
The ironic thing is, last week people were calling and hinting at a special session to deal with the gas tax issue. They just don't want their summer vacation interrupted.
Wes Moore says he's filled with broad generalizations and vague statements, but no details. When he shows up with details, I'll listen to him.
Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
The governor mentioned in his statement on the Salisbury shooting, Maryland has seen 2 mass shootings in less than a week. It comes on the heels of the governor's comments on the national stage. Some say the governor is giving mixed messages.
The false narratives of some politicians who say that every urban area is a city in crisis. A false narrative of some in the media who say that violence is everywhere.
But the other factual numbers are showing that in the state of Maryland, over the past 8 years, we have had a nearly double the homicide rate.
Well, the governor tells Fox 45 News it's not mixed messaging. The governor says he's stating facts. One critic says Governor Moore should be more direct in addressing crime in Baltimore and across the state.
I think it's smart for the governor. I think it's bad governing. I think to make people think that there is progress being made when there's not much evidence of progress being made, I think is misleading people.
Well, the governor says he is committed to public safety, but Republicans complain the Democratic majority in Annapolis only passed 1 significant crime bill this legislative session. 3 other bills never even made it past committee. They would have made the use of a gun during a violent crime a felony, increased fines or jail time for repeat firearm convictions, and made the theft of a handgun a felony. And according to a recent Gonzalez poll, nearly 90% of Maryland's both Democrats and Republicans support making stealing a gun a felony. Well, Harford County police say a 4th of July mass shooting in Edgewood was gang-related. 4 people were shot, including 2 teens. One of them walked into a Baltimore City hospital after that shooting. Investigators say the victims and suspects all know each other and are active gang members. Police say this is an ongoing investigation.
In Baltimore, law enforcement won't label violence gang activity, using terms like criminal enterprises instead. However, federal and state law enforcement have both said gangs fuel a lot of crime.
When I was commissioner, the mayor tried to tell me don't say there are gangs. I refused. We have gangs. They're violent gangs. They're deadly gangs. They're the cause for all the misery in this city. Why would you not acknowledge that?
Well, one concerned mother came to Fox 45 News in April after her 12-year-old son was murdered. She says gangs recruited her son for criminal activity since they knew he wouldn't face strict consequences if he was caught. More plaintiffs sign on to the lawsuit against BGE over the installation of external regulators. Joining that suit today, neighbors from West Baltimore who tried to sue BGE last fall when external regulators were put in front of their homes. One woman says BGE shut off her gas from Halloween to Christmas after she refused to have the regulator installed. She says BGE lacked transparency about why those installations were needed.
It didn't add up, and we found it very difficult to get clear, definitive answers to why it was needed, and every neighbor was told a different story.
You're seeing right now the kinds of issues that unite us all. BG&E has tried to divide and conquer us, but we won't let it happen.
When asked for a response, BGE said it can't comment on pending litigation. The case will be in front of a judge on Monday. A city council hearing on the external regulators is set for a week from today.
A dramatic decision by a federal judge, essentially preventing the federal government from communicating with social media companies. I'm Christine Frizzau on Capitol Hill with what this means